We want you to do a whole lot more than just save money. We want your money to grow, just like your dreams. We want you to achieve financial well-being and the feelings that go along with that. Capital Credit Union, doing the right thing.
What's up, Wisconsin? Welcome in the Inside Wisconsin podcast here on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Trevor Thomas flying solo today and chatting with a guy named Corey Behnke. How do I know that name? You might know his name from Cheesehead TV. He is the co-founder of Cheesehead TV, along with Aaron Nagler, who we've chatted with here on the podcast before in one of the Packer preview episodes. Guys like Aaron and Corey, Jason Wilde, Wes Hodkowitz, Matt Schneidman, and others know the Packers inside and out. Corey's story very much revolves around the Green Bay Packers and Cheesehead TV and Packers Transplants, but you may not know where that started and what else he has his fingers and his thumb into in regards to LiveX, which is a company that he is the co-founder and CEO of, and it's got a major footprint here in Green Bay, as well as the Green Bay Gardener, something he started this past August. He comes from a line of green thumbs, and he couldn't get out of it. You'll hear a little bit about that as well. The story of Corey Behnke and how Cheesehead TV, LiveX, and the Green Bay Gardener all landed literally across the street from Lambeau Field. You'll see. Enjoy this chat with Corey Behnke on the Inside Wisconsin podcast.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by Lane's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Amplify Health, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, and Miller Lite.
If you're a Packers fan and you don't know him, it's a problem, I think. Honestly, it's a problem. That's Corey Behnke, Cheesehead TV co-founder and the co-founder and CEO of LiveX. That one you may not know about. We're going to cover it today. Corey, thanks for being on the Inside Wisconsin podcast.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
All right, so tell me about the beginning. We'll cover your childhood and you being raised in other parts other than Green Bay, but you were born here in Green Bay. But take me to the beginning of Cheesehead TV first and what that was like when you and Aaron first started doing this.
That was 2007, right around 2006, 2007. Aaron Nagler and I used to have a phone call with each other every week, and we talk about the Packers because, in New York City, which is where we lived, you get the Packer Report, but you'd get the Packer Report, you'd get it on this Monday after the game of the previous week. So it's like 8 days late. You're like, oh, look what happened. And you're lucky if you got a game on TV. It's not like it is now with the inundation of sports media. But so every week we would have a call, usually on Wednesday or Thursday, and we just talk the crap about Packers and everything that happened in the game. And one day, this is years, right? 4 or 5 years of this call. And one day we were on the call and I just said, what if we turned this into a podcast, this conversation? He's like, well, I actually have a football blog, Aaron Nagler's football blog. And I was like, really? You're writing articles? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, all right, well, let's try it out. And that was the beginning of Cheesehead TV.
Totally on accident. That's how all these great things go. So Cheesehead TV was started as a podcast, but that was way before podcasts were even a thing.
Yeah.
What did that look and sound like back then?
Well, it was funny because we were of course, we went to drama school, went to conservatory together. So we all thought we were, we would literally, we laugh about this now. We were like, oh, Apple had this thing. They had all this, what you do for a podcast and it was all audio, right? And so we would literally spend 2 hours on a 20-minute podcast. And we would make sure all our facts were right. We would get our outline. We would have our intro. I mean, it was very well produced. And if I said one thing wrong, which now I say 10 things wrong every stream, if we said one little thing wrong, we would excruciatingly, it's just so funny to me to think thousands of people watch our show now. And back then it wasn't even in the tens of hundreds. It was the tens of people. And so it just was really funny. It was just really funny. Me and Nagler sitting around drinking beer, having a 20-minute podcast, but we would spend 2.5 hours of talk time to make it.
And based on how many beers, I would assume that the beginning of that was different than the end.
A
That's
little
hilarious.
bit. It was very professional. I would say
No
our
doubt.
first year was the most professional we ever did. So
It's still pretty professional today. Obviously, your company LiveX has a lot to do with that. Aaron Nagler works his tail off. But did you ever dream that Cheesehead TV would turn into the brand that Packers fans worldwide know it to be today?
we dreamed about it. We certainly dreamed about it. I remember being on the podcast and being like, "Oh, you know what would be cool? What if like we actually got voicemails from people and we responded? Oh my God, can you imagine if we went live and people would call into our show? Because you got to remember, like we couldn't get radio. We couldn't get Wisconsin radio. There wasn't. Nowadays, you can kind of get like your radio station, your and Josh's show. You can get it online. It's easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the funny thing about radio is you could get Chris Hobble's show, but Sportsline, you could get his show. It was the only one, but it was a link you had to download. So like, and it wouldn't happen until like 2 days later. It was on this thing called PackerNet, which is still a website, by the way. And I just remember listening to Chris Hobble, and it was the first time. And it's just so funny how the media you're exposed to informs the type of fan you are in some way. And it's very interesting, and not having a plethora of media back then, right? So you're getting your stuff from Packer Report, which is fine. It's a fine publication. But then Chris Hobble. And like, I didn't even know until like 7 or 8 years that Chris Hobble was kind of controversial because he never went to training camp and he never did all this stuff. He just talked a bunch of junk. He basically does what I do. So poor guy, he got a lot of flack. He got a lot of flack for that. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I'm like, this is great. Harry Sidney and Chris Hobble. I'm loving this. This is some content. This is great.
Jeez, that's amazing. So take us why, though, you landed in New York. We're kind of working from today backwards a little bit, but you started in Green Bay because you were born here, and that's where your Packers fandom comes from, yeah?
Yeah, I was born here, but we were like the black sheep, my family. So we moved to Los Angeles. My dad had a bar in New London that was very successful. I was around 5 or 6 years old. And long story short, the landlord kind of took the bar from him. He loaded up his softball bus, so the men's and women's softball bus that was purple, and we put all our stuff in it, and we drove to Los Angeles. He got a job in Los Angeles doing props and other things, worked as an upholsterer. Then my mom got a job in North Carolina working for American Airlines, starting their reservation center. So we moved to Raleigh, and then I went to school in Winston-Salem, University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And then when you're in a conservatory and you're in an acting school, you kind of have to go to New York or LA. And so I went to New York. And then 2 years later, Aaron Nagler came to New York because I had gone to school with him. He was 2 years under me. Even though he's older, by the way, he's older than me, just for the record. And then in New York, I was in New York for 23 years. And so really the word Packard Transplants, it's funny, the whole transplants thing is like, now I'm like way into plants and stuff, but everybody was like, that name is lame. And we were like, but that's who we are. Like, and what we realized as we grew the site, I remember so many. I remember like every time I would go on vacation, the site would break because we had this like hockey stick kind of growth on the site. Like now, people don't realize this, but our website gets about 1 million people a month. Jeez, it's crazy. It's insane. And so I remember when we get like thousands, and I'm paying like $8.99 hosting fees, like on these like shared hosting domain things. And this is so funny because it just, without fail, it'd be Friday night or Saturday, and I'd be like going to a vacation somewhere, driving to the beach or something, and the site would break, and Nagler would text me like, the site's broken. Like, damn it. And like, I was the main reason. Like, it was my HTML code and PHP. I had to learn, I learned how to do basically I learned how to start out so that I could build the PHP and the HTML code and everything in there. And then now we have a developer, and now we're a little bit more sophisticated. And now if the site's down, like, I just send an email, so it's a little bit easier. But yeah, those were heady days.
CheeseheadTV.com is the site that you're talking about, because when I hear Cheesehead TV, I think of you and Aaron doing what we're doing now with Packers Transplants and the watch parties. And I know I've shared this with you personally, but when COVID was happening and all of the things that were 2020, I remember tuning into you guys or Pat McAfee, and I'm going, man, I really think I could do something, but I want to talk to those guys. where does all of the passion for the Packers come from? I mean, you said it. You were born here, but New London, then went to LA, and then Raleigh, and then New York. Is it just in your blood, or where does it all come from?
Yeah, well, there's a picture I have of my great grandpa Bruner, who actually he had an orchestra. And they actually, his orchestra, Robert Bruner's orchestra, they traveled on the ferry from Manitowoc to Ludington, which still exists, but they don't have an orchestra playing on the ferry anymore. And there's a picture of him holding me when I'm 3 years old, and I've got a Packers helmet. It's not even a Packers helmet, but it's a green and gold helmet. And then I have a football in my hand. He's carrying me, and he was the least of my grandfathers who liked the Packers. My grandpa Behnke actually had season tickets before the war. He had season tickets, and then fought in World War II, and then came back and got season tickets. And really was him. It was his love for it. And my family is from Brillion, Manitowoc, Michigan. I mean, like, how can you not, right? You're just surrounded by it. What I think is funny is some of my other family, my other grandfather, he was like, yeah, I didn't really like the Packers in the 50s until 60s and Bart Starr. So I really liked hockey. It's really funny to see, like, in the 40s and 50s when the Packers weren't that great and what people liked around here,
So that behind you is not a picture. That is Lambeau Field.
Yeah.
You live here now. When did you come back from New York? And we have a lot to cover, by the way, of your time in New York, the LiveX side of your life. But when did you decide to come back and remake Green Bay your home?
Yeah, so it's kind of two parts, but they're pretty quick. The first part is, so I had a dream when I went with my grandpa Behnke, who was just talking about, and I was 7 years old, I think, maybe 8. There's some dispute here, but I remember I got to go to a Bishop's charity game. And for those of you that don't know, the Bishop's charity game, I don't think they call it that anymore, by the way. It's usually the main home preseason Packers game. And when you're a kid, and a lot of people might know this, especially when their family has season tickets, you're not really allowed. There's a certain age that you kind of get to graduate to go to regular season games. So preseason games are like your thing. And so this is my first preseason game ever, and I'm by the statue, actually, which they're a little different now and back then how it was. But I was by I was pointing. I just remember seeing the houses on Shadow Lane. Now I know they're Shadow Lane. At the time I didn't. And I just remember pointing and being like, I want that. And like my grandfather laughing. And I never let it go, which the thing about me is once I get my teeth into something and that's the thing, I won't let it go. And I was funny because I'm telling you, I would come here, and I would come here for games, one a year, maybe 2 a year if I'm lucky, right? On my grandpa's tickets, and just living your life how you do when you don't live in Wisconsin. And I would drive around the stadium on Friday or Saturday before the game whenever I got here, and I would go to each house and I would look at it, I would get the address, I would just look and be like, oh man, that would be so cool. Like, and I thought it had left me, right? Because I'm like, I didn't buy a house until I was in my 40s, to be honest with you, or late 30s. And so I remember turning 30 and being like, man, am I ever going to be able to buy a house or do anything? And 2016, a buddy of mine who I knew from Cheesehead TV, really long story. Like, I met him in 2009, and then I met him at a tailgate. There's a picture of us where I have my face painted in New York. We're playing the Giants, and he's dressed as Clay Matthews. And it was the first time I met him. There's a picture in our tailgate room. It's awesome. And it was the first time I met him. Well, he went door to door on Shadow Lane and knocked on every door and eventually bought this house. And so we went to it. I'm like, man, you did this. That's amazing. Like, 10 years later, he does this, right? And so I'm like, this is incredible. I want this. And he knew how badly, right? And I'm sitting at the DNC 2016. So 2016 DNC in Philadelphia. We're behind the scenes. We're getting ready for it. So LiveX had only been a company about 3 or 4 years at this point. And my buddy Matt calls me and he's like, hey, my neighbor is thinking about selling his place. And I was like, wait, what? And so immediately I got a flight. I wrote a letter to his neighbor. I got a flight. They ended up, they weren't going to do a private listing. So this was on Wednesday. He told me on Thursday, I'm traveling to Green Bay. At Friday, it listed. I saw the place. I put in an offer. Saturday it went back and forth. Sunday we closed. It was
What?
fast. Yeah.
Closed on Sunday after the offer on set. Jeez.
Basically, yeah, because I was like, we're getting this. Like, this is happening. And
Incredible.
so, yeah, and so we commuted. We commuted from New York for every game, as many as we could, but pretty much every game, until about 2020. So when the pandemic happened, I helped produce the DNC 2020 from Milwaukee. So I was one of 200 people that actually got to go to the convention, unfortunately, because no one was allowed to go besides people working on it. And I learned a couple things in Milwaukee. One, there's this amazing internet service that goes to Chicago. So for streaming, those of you know, you kind of need the internet. It's kind of important, but not just any internet, right? You want dedicated internet. You need to have transmission speeds that are certain levels and all this stuff. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I needed to expand my business because we were really doing a lot of remote production. Remote production had been like a small part of our business, about 10%, and then it immediately became like 150% of our business. And so one of the things I always tell people is like, we had remote master control rooms in New York City for our company, and I needed more of them. I needed to build them. And New York City rent in Manhattan is like $50 a square foot. It's a lot of money. That's a lots of dollars for that. And so I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if I could just walk down the hallway and open a door, and that would be another master control room, but that master control room could be anywhere because all I really need is internet and build out and do my equipment stuff. And as long as I have really good internet and power redundancy, I'm fine. And so I just basically after DNC, I was like, well, I have the home in Green Bay. I love Green Bay. I always knew that I would retire in Green Bay. I always knew I wanted to be in Green Bay. I mean, you're talking about somebody, I've driven around the city before I moved here so many times. I drove down Broadway and would count the bars. I would go downtown. Just everything about Green Bay. I don't know what it is. It just got in my Green Bay's been inside of me for a very long time. And, maybe it's because I was born at St. Vincent's Hospital. Maybe it's because I was away for so long and didn't ever get to experience Wisconsin. But Green Bay, I was just like, you know what? I don't know if the labor is here that I need, but I think once I found out about the Rail Yard Innovation District, which is downtown Green Bay, and what that is a subsidized fiber loop that goes all the way to Chicago to an AWS pop point. And basically, it's a fiber internet that goes directly into what we would call the internet, which is an very easy way to explain that. That is not like an advanced way to explain that. But so that existed, and that line in New York cost us $1,800 a month, and I need 3 of them. And in Wisconsin, it was costing $400. And now it's actually gone down a little bit, which is pretty amazing. Jeez. And I was like, well, this is great. So I've got internet. Obviously, rent's a little bit cheaper in Green Bay. You might know this, but a little bit cheaper than Manhattan. And then I was like, okay, well, can I get labor? And honestly, what I realized was so many people that produce broadcasts. So LiveX is a live streaming services company. We produce shows for Fortune 1000 companies, the NBA. So we've produced Nike Nationals women's tournament in Chicago for the last 2 years. We've produced TikToks for Major League Baseball, for the World Series, and for the Home Run Derby. So we're a services company doing live streams for large companies and big clients. And so most of the people that do what we do, they live in Los Angeles or New York, primarily New York, so East Coast, West Coast. And there's not really a company in the Midwest that does that, And so I was like, but what if there was? And what about people that like want to have a family? Or what I realized was in Green Bay, Milwaukee has this, every place has this, where you might graduate for broadcast and then you get a job at a local television station or something, right?
Right.
But then what's your next move? And typically, and you look at our market, it's definitely like this, right? It's like reporters, right? It's like why most reporters that work in television, they don't stay here because we're such a small market. We're a stepping stone through the market as you get your ambitions in your career. And it's not a bad thing. It's just how the industry kind of works, right? And so what I was thinking is like, okay, well, what about those people where maybe they worked at Fox 11 or maybe they worked at NBC 26, but now they want a second job, but they want to stay here with their family or they want to do this thing. And so I realized that those people exist, and there's really, really, really good people here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Northeast Wisconsin, that want to do this kind of work.
Okay, so you brought it up a couple times and you name dropped it a couple times. LiveX. I talked about this on the radio show this morning with Josh and I on Inside Wisconsin Sports, that you were next on the podcast and that we all know you from Cheesehead TV, but you may not know about LiveX. And Josh is like, well, I do. And I'm like, yeah, I know you do. But I think a lot of people out there may not. So you were in Raleigh, North Carolina, decided to move to New York City. When in your path did LiveX happen and how did it start?
Well, I wanted to be an actor since I was 6 years old. That's what's crazy. And when you're an actor in New York, so I moved to New York to be an actor. I got my union card, my actor's equity card for the stage acting when I was 19. So I'm in New York City. I'm doing shows. I'm making not very much money. I think the year that I made the most money was like almost hit $40,000 one year just as an actor, which I was very, very, very proud of. And when you're acting and you're not making a lot of money, you got to temp and you got to do other jobs, right? Most people think about waiters, but production assistant is actually a cool job. And I was temping a lot, but I started production assisting. So it gave me some flexibility and I was able to be the production assistant in 2002 for the New Year's Eve in Times Square ball drop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the PA for the production manager of the event. And that was cool, but then I was 25 years old, and my mentor at the time, who's now one of my biggest mentors in my life, he sent me to the broadcast truck. And so I'm like, walking in the broadcast truck. And I remember the moment walking in there because I see how powerful this can be for other people is I walked in there and I immediately felt at home. And I was just like, wow, this is where I've been trying to get to my whole life. And I did look like I still acted for a little bit. I trained for Blue Man. That's a whole nother story. I was
the Blue Man group.
Yeah, I was a Blue Man for a hot second.
Okay.
While I was kind of making this transition, I was still acting, and then about a year into it, I started freelancing, and I was like, you know what? I think I started to be my mentor's assistant, and I did Ryder Cup with him. We did a Ryder Cup, I believe that was 2004. We did like 150-foot stage for the Ryder Cup opening and closing ceremonies. And we did I got to do a 50-cent show in Las Vegas. That was amazing. I got to do all these cool events, right? I got to follow Gwen Eiffel, the late, great Gwen Eiffel from PBS NewsHour, on her road show on Fridays and got to meet a bunch of amazing people. And I just loved it. And I was like, you know what? I want to go all in on this career. So fast forward 2009, I basically went to my bosses at New Year's Eve and I said, hey, we should stream our own version of New Year's Eve in Times Square. So of course you have Dick Clark and you have CNN and you have all these shows, right? And the whole point of New Year's, it's like an event. Maybe if you think about the Olympics, it's kind of like the Olympics, right? So the Olympics actually has NBC is just one license holder of the Olympics, but there's this thing called OBS, Olympic Broadcasting Service, that they create to do all the feeds. So when you're watching an NBC swimming, 60% of that is the OBS feeds. It's funny because OBS is now a streaming service, a streaming software.
Right. I was like,
so New Year's Eve in Times Square is an event, right? The Times Square Alliance and the Countdown Entertainment put on this amazing event, but all these broadcasters come in. So I said to my bosses, I said, look, we've got all these feeds. We can do all this stuff. Let's stream a show. And in 2009, I was able to produce the first webcast. And now I don't know how many years it's been, but I think we're in year 16 of that. So fast forward, I'm doing this show, and the first time I streamed it, I knew I wanted to use livestream.com. So why I knew I wanted to use that, because Aaron and I, as we're searching for live streaming partners, as we're making Packers Transplants a live show, I had kind of tested out all the platforms at the time: Ustream, Livestream, Twitch, which is really now was Justin TV, and Livestream just had the best. It was the best. I was like, I could use the encoder on my monitor, and you got to understand, I produced Packer Transplants where I would actually mix the show. So I had S video cameras, I had playback, but I'm doing everything. Nagler just makes the script and talks. He does the important work, but I was doing all the technical stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we chose Livestream. So I reached out to Livestream and I said, hey, I'm going to do this broadcast for New Year's Eve, and I think I want to use your platform. And so I start to get a relationship with everybody there. It was successful the first year, and they start hiring me as a freelance live stream producer. And so I got to do really cool stuff. I got to do Red Bull Studios from Santa Monica live artist streams. I got to do incredible things with live stream, and they hired me to be their head of production. And so in 2010, they hired me to be their head of production, and I ran basically the entire production business of livestream.com. And fast forward to about 2015, they wanted to move to Brooklyn. And it's funny now because LiveX is in Brooklyn, but I don't live there. But I, at the time, did not want to move to Brooklyn. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a services company. I think this is fun, but I'm going to go ahead and start my own business. And so in end of 2015, I left livestream.com and I started LiveX.
And here we are.
And basically, yeah. We're in year 11, I think. Yeah, in year 11.
It's incredible. Does Green Bay and the Packers in your fandom, along with what you do with Cheesehead TV, do you give what you learned there and the drive of bringing Cheesehead TV to life? Is that ultimately what drove you with LiveX?
I don't know. I just am pretty relentless person. I think that's more the thing. It's so funny because I was at this networking event at the automobile show in Automobile Gallery in downtown Green Bay, which if you haven't been, it's pretty cool.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's incredible. Bart Starr's cars there. It was so funny because all the people were like, oh, what's the best car? And they're like, this Ferrari and this thing. I'm like, guys, that's Bart Starr's like freaking car. There is no better car here than that. I'm sorry.
That 70s show car just showed up too.
I know. I saw that. I saw that. Yeah, it did. Which is pretty cool. But Bart Starr's car. Come on.
Yeah.
Bart
it's his MVP car, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think he won it. Yeah, it's got a really cool story. Anyway, so I'm at this networking event and somebody goes, is Cheesehead TV like a hobby thing or is it like a profitable, is it like a money thing? And I was like, that's a great question. Like we've been around for 17 years. And honestly, like we've only really been the money has gone out of my pocket and into Cheesehead TV for about 15 of those years. Maybe we're on year 18. And so I do think that, and you and I have actually talked about this in previous years, where I do think it's interesting. We're in an interesting moment where I think sponsors and other things are a little bit easier to get because people see ROI on these things. But like, I do think there's something to, if you're not in the town, it's hard to sell sponsorships. It's hard to create, because to me, sponsorships are relationships, right? They're relationships with people who they want to sell a product, but it's got to fit and align with your vision. You need to take time to form those relationships. It takes a certain kind of person to form those relationships. So I think we could have made more money, but the cool journey of Cheesehead TV, in my opinion, is all of the indirect benefits from Cheesehead TV that I've received, and as well as Aaron, my partner. His journey is really incredible. From basically being a PR rep at Blackstone to doing this on the side to getting a job at Bleacher Report to then getting a job at FanDuel to then being the beat reporter for the Green Bay Press Gazette, the paper of record for the Green Bay Packers, to then, basically coming back to Cheesehead TV. So kind of the cool thing, I think, that goes back to your question is like Cheesehead TV has existed because of basically my will. And now because Aaron's been here, then he wasn't here, then he's not here. Yeah. And it was just one of those things where it was like, all right, well, it's going to be devoted to Green Bay Packer fans, whatever we are internally. And we just kind of stuck to that.
And you got a green thumb, bro. Look at in your backyard. I mean, that's your hobby, right? The Green Bay gardener.
100%. Although you know how it is, Trevor. As soon as you start creating content for your hobby, it becomes not a hobby anymore. Yeah, I started a YouTube channel. I started with a raised garden bed when I first moved here in 2021. So into the garden season, I got a raised bed because I just had lawn, and I was like, you know what? never really grown stuff. I've always wanted to. We had plants in our house, but I never really had South Sun or any of those things. All my relatives are all green thumbs. I've come from a family of either farmers or gardeners. And I just started doing it. I did one 6x6 raised bed, and now my entire lawn. I have a 20x30 pollinator garden. I have a 10x20 vegetable garden. I'm building I have all bee lawn. Yeah, and so I started a YouTube channel in August. On August 18th of this year, called Green Bay Gardener, and I'm an idiot. That's what that is. That's what
you got
that
your
is.
hands full of things with Packers and things with LiveX and things with your garden. When I first started this, the reason I wanted to talk to you guys and guys like you is because I love what people do and how they do it, but I'm more interested in who they are, right? So here's two dudes that do these really fun watch parties, and they are a real live rendition of what Packer fans go through. And obviously you can't broadcast the game itself, but I have sat down, and actually I sent you a picture of this not long ago. You guys were on my big TV and the game was on a small TV. And I was like, how amazing for guys to do this and have a person like me go, I think this would be kind of fun. I can't talk to you. You're not here. We can't high five. But when Aaron rips up that doll, I'm intrigued. So the work is really cool. And now obviously you guys have built a business out of this along with the LiveX business. What's next, man?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm about to make an announcement with the University of Wisconsin Green Bay, for helping template out some internships at LiveX. I'm pretty heavy in the community here in Green Bay. I am on the board for Arts and Culture Brown County, which is, trying to really bring in a true arts council to Green Bay, which can help kind of seed the ground with more culture here, and also do a better job of marketing the culture that actually exists. It's kind of incredible. There's almost 7,000 people in Northeast Wisconsin, pretty much Brown County is what I'm talking about here, that make a living as an artist, some kind of designer, craftsman, in private and nonprofit sector, and they're responsible for over $600 million in typically exported revenue to other places. And a lot of people don't realize that, and there's a lot of people that they'll come here and they don't realize what's happening, that's from a cultural standpoint. And so I'm on the board of the communications department for the University of Green Bay. I really want to help them. We've been working with two deans, but right now I'm working with Ryan Martin, the dean of humanities, what's called CAUSE. Don't ask me to say all the things. It's like communications, humanity. It's the largest school at GB. And it's been fascinating working with him and the chancellor of trying to create a media and production department and a degree for people, to really help kind of, get this community really thinking about the future and thinking about media and content creation and all those things. Oshkosh has a really good program. We have some employees at LiveX that went to University of Oshkosh, but we think we can build something kind of special. And GB is actually, for those of you who don't know, is a very, very special school. It's one of the few growing universities in the state, with almost 20,000 students enrolled from like 10,000 only, like I think 6 or 7 years ago. And don't hit me on the stats, but it was from 10,000 to almost 20,000 in a very short time, like within the last decade or so. And those are my passions. And then I started Green Bay Gardener, to be honest with you, to have a marketing arm to be able to really push pollination and really push native plants. And Wisconsin is home. Wisconsin is home to some of the most amazing geography in the world. The Niagara Escarpment begins here, Lake Winnebago. I mean, where Green Bay is situated is a very, 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 very special place from an ecological, a geographic, and just all kinds of ways. And I just love it here. And so the more that I can contribute to the environmental good of this place, to the economic good of this place, and to the cultural good of this place, that's really my focus.
All right, last question for me. I tell people this on the radio. I tell friends and family back home in Southeast Wisconsin. I never take for granted driving by and seeing the G on that stadium behind you. And I know you don't. This is simple, yet I think it's going to be deep-rooted. Why the Packers?
I mean, they're the best. They're one of the best things about America. They're this team that should never have happened in a place where if it was anywhere else, they would not exist anymore. And for decades, they almost went bankrupt. I think Cliff Crystal says they weren't really solvent until 54, 55, or 56, somewhere in the mid 50s, late 50s. And they were able to, the community was able to come together many times, save this team, save this thing, save this idea. And they found a way to convince a man who was arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time to come here, create Black culture, like literally knew he needed to create Black culture in a town that has had no Black culture in the 60s. I'm talking about Vince Lombardi. And so they were able to basically get this man here, have him create this incredible team and people that surrounded this team to create almost this like legendary force around the G, which he created, right? He was a New York Yankees fan. He loved the fact that the Yankees had a trademark, and he wanted to give that to Green Bay. This incredible New Jersey, New York man. God bless him. I love him so much. Like I never met him and he was dead before I even was born, but he gave us this incredible gift that honestly is the seed for what you see today, not only for the Green Bay Packers, but the NFL. And it's just the gift that keeps on giving. And I just don't know. It's so easy to love the Packers. I love the Brewers. I love the Milwaukee Bucks. Living here, I love all Wisconsin teams. Don't get me started on the Badgers, but that's more of a internecine thing between Green Bay and Madison, whatever. But I do. I love all things Wisconsin. But I don't think anybody disputes the fact that there is nothing more Wisconsin than the Green Bay Packers. And to me, like every time I see that flag, like you can barely see it on the thing, but every time I look at that flag, I remember when I first bought the house and it'd be raining and that flag is up. There's just nothing more American. There's nothing, and it's so funny because we're not like a socialist society, right? But we have this community owned team. Like it's just so beautiful, like all around. It's this very beautiful way of having this thing that exists and couldn't exist anywhere else.
Mic drop. Corey Behnke, Cheesehead TV co-founder, co-host, Packers Transplants, LiveX co-founder and CEO, and maybe most importantly, dude, take off the headset and go in the garden. Just go get your thumb green. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Touch some grass. Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by Lane's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Amplify Health, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, and Miller Lite.
My thanks to Corey Behnke for joining us on the Inside Wisconsin podcast. Thanks to all of the partners and sponsors that you see rotating on this screen. None of this would be possible without them. That talk, those conversations, that's exactly what we set out to do with the Inside Wisconsin podcast when we launched it back in April of 2021. It's been almost 5 years. Very, very grateful to all of you listening and watching. There is change upon us in the Inside Wisconsin world. You see and hear myself and a guy named Josh Albrecht doing the show every morning on the radio statewide on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. John Anderson jokes that I plug it a lot. I do. It's an arm of the Inside Wisconsin brand that we've been able to bring to life in Inside Wisconsin sports. If this is a deep dive with the people that you recognize and know and love from the state of Wisconsin, then the morning show from 6 to 9 is an arm of that, only talking about the here, now, and today in regards to Wisconsin sports. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for watching this and subscribing to this and sharing this and liking this and commenting on this and 5-star reviewing this, which so many of you have done. I appreciate it. As you were, Wisconsin, we'll see you next time.